These fine United States of ours were founded on the ideals of freedom, justice, and liberty for all. Well, except for those colored folks, and Indians, and Italians, and Irish, and, well, women and whatnot. But then, some 80 years later, we fought the Civil War and gave everyone freedom. Another 80 short years, and we're doing the right thing and fighting the Nazis because they were the enemy of freedom and democracy. After putting those sauerkrauts and friends in their place, we Americans got real jazzed about freedom, and for the rest of the 20th century, we would stand up against those damned communists because they hated our freedom, of course. Ever since then, America has been nothing but sunshine and rainbows, a city on a hill to the rest of a new world where America is the undisputed top dog. Now, we might have had to rustle some feathers and use some Agent Orange and firebombed a few Iraqi children's hospitals to get here, but we've always strived to live up to our ideals, and today, billions of people around the world look to the United States as the righteous sword and shield of international peace and fair democracy. Look, if you passed your U.S. history class without questioning a thing, this might be your view of the world. If you have the top secret security clearance to view this tape, you're probably more in tune with some of the monkey business our great nation has gotten into, and you might just have an idea where this is going. Maybe you've heard passing stories of torture, assassinations, various massacres, maybe even mind control experiments carried out by the good old U.S. government. And maybe, every once in a while, you hear these things and get a small glimpse behind the curtain. But these spheres of discussion are known for nothing if not for the white noise of overlapping or unsubstantiated conspiracy theories, making it hard to actually get a clear sense of what skeletons we actually have in our closet. So, if you're one of the 8 people in the world authorized to watch this, I'm proud to present to you the definitive, CIA-backed, coup d'etat, top 5 tier list. In this top-secret cringe compilation, I'll be bringing you the highlight reel of CIA trolling, from the hilarious to the inhumane and the brutal beyond comprehension. It's not just a list, but a tier list. I'll be ranking all of our most memorable works in order of how successful they were, from an American perspective, of course, because we're always the good guys. Starting off with our all-time favorite sandbox, Latin America. The name Banana Wars might make you think of a Donkey Kong Mario Party minigame, but it was actually a US-backed and CIA-executed coup of a sovereign government that was formed an exploitative and authoritarian but pro-business dictatorship, replacing it with one of those democracies we all know and love. Except for us, because it threatened other American-backed dictators we had previously installed in the region. So, in 1950, Jacobo Arbenz is elected president and starts spewing all this garbage about land reform this and anti-worker exploitation that. This was mainly a problem because at the time, the United Fruit Company's yearly revenue was literally twice that of Guatemala's government itself. Arbenz also legalized the Guatemalan Communist Party, so I think you can already guess where this is going. After tons of lobbying/bribing by United Fruit, we started deploying CIA assets to overthrow their government. Although, let's be honest, they didn't exactly need to move a mountain to get our boys to go do some rough. So, when the time was right, we trained a force led by one of their exiled military officers, Carlos Castillo. Whoa, you've got to be kidding me! Look at that stash! Anyways, the campaign begins but gets off to a rocky start, probably because of his mustache. So we send in some bomber squadrons for target practice on civilian areas, as well as some good old-fashioned psychological operations. Over time, the consistent bombing and demoralization eventually led to the toppling of Arbenz, along with the tried-and-true installation of a pro-American military dictator. After the operation was over, though, the CIA actually destroyed all files related to this little vacation until the Senate decided to investigate it in 1975. Then we played dumb and said we lost them all and basically pleaded oopsie daisies when lying to President Eisenhower about the civilian casualties. It somehow worked, though, as the U.S. continued supporting this and other military regimes even after the ethnic genocide of tens of thousands of native Mayans. Clinton did say sorry, though, almost half a century later, so it's sort of a happy ending in a way, right? As a related note to other similar Latin American escapades, we really just couldn't resist the opportunity to turn a profit in places like the Panama Canal Zone, or off of commodities like tropical fruit, coffee, chocolate, all things the American public was building up an appetite for post-World War II. These were, for the most part, a success, with the U.S. seeing nothing but green for as far as the eye could see. And well, yellow because there was hella bananas. As you might have noticed, these wars involved messy and overt tools like soldiers and high explosives, instead of the cocaine and prostitutes like some of our other top hits. However, as an oldie but a goodie, they take their rightful place in A tier. Coming up to the pitching mound is Cuba in 1961. A few years before this, American-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista is overthrown by communist Fidel Castro and the people of Cuba. A Marxist government 90 miles off the coast of the U.S. is bad enough, but the fact that they're buddy-buddy with the Soviets means America is now within nuking range. So, the U.S. launches the Bay of Pigs invasion and gets nay-nayed on so bad that Che Guevara sends a handwritten letter to JFK's desk, basically saying, "Take this L, bozo." The long version was more or less the same, stating, "Thanks for Playa Girón. Before the invasion, the revolution was weak. Now it is stronger than ever." Kennedy was coping and seething because of this, and we were literally just trying to help when we suggested Operation Northwoods and, committing terrorist attacks against Americans to later blame on Cuba, but he got all pissy about it for some reason. He was even recorded by an official as stating that he would, quote, "splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds." These were basically his famous last words as we handed him the biggest L he would ever take in Dallas less than 7 days later. A pretty stupid thing to say when your vice president and next in line to take your spot when you die was the former director of the CIA just a couple years before, but we'll get to him later, I promise. Anyways, the CIA would double down on crippling Cuba and committed dozens of terrorist attacks against Cuban civilian targets in what was known as Operation Mongoose. But that was only part of it. This is a huge oversummarization, but the CIA would make over 600 attempts on Castro's life and reputation before he literally just died of old age. Some of the strictest sanctions and embargoes the world has ever seen did literally next to nothing to put down Cuba, despite a UN resolution passing literally every year for the past 30 years condemning it. We don't really care, so it's whatever, even if they do have a higher life expectancy than Americans, which kinda stings, but oh well. The judge pronounces Cuba as solid, sad-faced tier. Next up is another certified hood classic, Afghanistan. In 1979, a communist revolution brings a Soviet-friendly government into power. Where have I heard this before? So, the CIA funnels loads of cash to a group of Islamic militants known as the Mujahideen, sort of like grandma giving you money on your birthday, except it also included over 2,000 surface-to-air missiles along with a ton of other fun toys. Some of the extremist commanders we were raining all of this equipment on basically wore matching friendship bracelets with none other than the Oxford University-educated Osama bin Laden. Some to most of these CIA-funded militias would actually become a part of Al-Qaeda in the future, including bin Laden himself, and U.S. military equipment would later be used on our own troops. This totally shocking and unforeseeable event happened because the U.S. basically started doing backroom deals with Saudi Arabia that more or less boiled down to them selling us their oil for money to buy our weapons and military bases for protection from their neighbors that weren't exactly too neighborly. By us, of course, I mean American defense and oil companies, as the taxpayer more or less footed the bill for all of it. I mean, sure, there's something to be said about other countries who don't spend trillions on foreign wars around the world and are able to afford weird stuff like free healthcare and education, but it's all worth it if it means that the military-industrial complex got to enjoy higher stock prices for a while, isn't it? The other day, I went to the hospital for some weird herpes thing that the aliens at Area 51 gave me, and the bill was more than I make in 5 years. I even called Obama to drone strike the hospital, but he said he was out of office and couldn't do anything for me anymore. Thanks, Obama. Am I right? What? Huh? Oh, I see. So I've just been told that I accidentally said something I shouldn't have and have my mandatory suicide scheduled in like 60 seconds. So briefly summarizing here, our friend Lyndon B. Johnson from earlier doubled down on Vietnam after taking office, coincidentally awarding most of the weapons contracts to the company where his wife was the main stockholder, which coincidentally made him, as a former CIA director, filthy rich. The guy who orchestrated whipping a nay-nay on Kennedy did so well that his career was boosted like really high, and that guy was George H.W. Bush. He was then made CIA director and after that vice president, which pretty weird repeat, right? All while getting massive money bags from the Saudis because he was more or less one of the people at the table during those backroom deals. After becoming president, all his playmates got into power, so they had to repay his debt to the Saudi Arabians by invading Iraq, which was one of their big bad neighbors. However, this failed fails, and Saddam is not overthrown, and George Sr. loses re-election, so he gets his two sons jobs as governors, and gets one to steal the election for the other. Now, George Bush Jr. has to finish the mission, so he has a now leaked report written by a commission that states it would take a new Pearl Harbor to get the American public to support more wars in the Middle East. So he uses a CIA asset named Bin Laden to... Wait, no!